What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we're going to be checking out the Samsung Galaxy S10 in 2020. Now, I think this is a really interesting device for a lot of reasons. First off, it's no secret that while Samsung phones have been very expensive, especially over the last couple of years, they do depreciate like crazy, even just a few weeks after launch. And now that the 1-year mark has rolled around, you can get the phone for almost 50% off, which I think is pretty amazing. Also, with a lot of new phones being released right now that are well under $1,000, like Samsung's A series line, for example, or the new OnePlus 8, and even the new iPhone SE that was just announced today, you've got a lot of options for sort of mid-range phones. But oftentimes, getting last year's flagship at a discount might be a better deal than getting a new mid-range phone from this year. And that's definitely something I want to talk about in this video. Most importantly though, if you are considering a new device for any reason right now, I hope this video helps you out in making that important purchase decision. So let's go ahead and get right into it and see how this phone stacks up now. First off, let's talk about price, since I think this is going to be one of the biggest deciding factors. When it launched last year, the S10 retailed for $800. That's still lower than the flagships we have this year, but expensive nonetheless. However, right now on Amazon, you can get a factory unlocked renewed S10 for just a little over $430. I honestly think that's a great deal for this phone, and it's probably the best overall value right now as far as 2019 flagships. Also, with the hype of the S20 sort of gone now, I think S10 prices have hit rock bottom. So if you've been holding off on making that purchase, now is a good time to do it. And if you are interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, or maybe want to buy this phone for yourself, I'll leave some links to the cheapest priced Amazon listings down below in the video description. So check down there so you don't miss out. Physically, this is a phone that obviously still looks really good. It's a flagship in every sense of the word. And really, even over the last couple of years now, Samsung hasn't made any drastic changes to their design. So none of their phones feel dated even a year or two later. This is an all metal and glass phone with polished edges and a super premium feel in the hand. And actually, what I like about the S10 in particular is that it does have that more of a subtle curve to the glass and display. I know some people don't like it, and maybe they're glad that we're headed back to a flatter profile, but I think it's something I'm gonna miss. Overall, the phone looks good and feels great. And again, I think the big thing here is value. You aren't gonna find too many other phones that are designed like this with the high quality materials and flagship form factor for well under $500. So that's definitely something to consider. I think maybe the only design cue that isn't all that great is the placement of the front camera. This stemmed from Samsung just trying something new in putting it in the corner. It was basically a one-time thing. We of course went back to a center hole punch with the S20, and while I don't think it's an awful choice, it probably wasn't the best decision. Fortunately, it obviously doesn't impact anything as far as usability or even screen real estate. You've still got a super high screen to body ratio, with the display stretching to the farthest corners and edges of the phone. If you want to get nitpicky, yes, the top bezel is larger than the sides, and the bottom bezel is even larger still, but we're talking barely noticeable borders at all in general. This is a phone that still looks good in 2020 and will likely be able to blend in with a majority of smartphones that come out well into next year and even beyond. I think if there were just one reason to pick a Samsung flagship over the competition, it would most definitely be because of the display. The S10 offered a full 3040 by 1440p resolution screen, packing in 550 pixels per inch. The AMOLED panel supports HDR10+, and once again, I'm going to say that for the price, that $400 to $500 range, I'm not so sure that you can find a better viewing experience. While Samsung may have made some slight adjustments to the screen with the S20, and obviously introduced 120 Hz as well, the big important stuff mostly remains the same. This is a bold and bright screen that offers an immense amount of detail and really looks good from every angle. I think especially if you're coming from a new mid-range phone with a 1080p display, or maybe even an LCD, for example, the difference is night and day with the S10. This is still a flagship phone after all, and the display on this 2019 device far exceeds anything you could get that was released in 2020 at a similar price. Underneath the display, you of course have that fingerprint reader. Now I think with the S10, Samsung did a good job introducing this feature to their flagship line last year. It's probably 90% as good as the S20 or other Android phones right now, and I don't have too many complaints using it. But I also combine it with Face Unlock. So either way, I can get into the phone easily and quickly. Yes, the latest in-display fingerprint readers are better, especially on the S20, but the setup here is still solid, even though it is a year old. One of the biggest considerations people have in going with sort of last year's phones is of course the performance, but I think especially over the last couple of years, this just shouldn't be a concern any longer. While at one point we did see huge improvements to specs and performance year over year, we just aren't seeing that any longer. And that means that going with last year's phone doesn't mean you're getting significantly worse performance. The S10 packs a Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 processor, Adreno 640 GPU, and 8 gigs of RAM. There isn't a thing here that's underpowered or outdated, even by 2020 standards. And using this phone for everyday stuff, that certainly shows. Obviously, you've got the latest Android 10 update with One UI 2 as well, so everything feels a little fresher. And I think Android 10 did make this phone a bit quicker as well. Again, you have to keep in mind that year over year, the performance upgrades now are just getting less and less significant. So to put things into perspective, while the S20 may cost $800 or $900, you're not getting a phone that's twice as fast for twice the price. That may have been the case a few years ago, but it's just not how things are today. The S10 can still keep up and perform, even if you need to push it even harder. And I think looking ahead, this is a phone that still has 3 or 4 more years of life left in it, at least. As a long-term investment especially, this is a device that offers incredible value. It doesn't feel sluggish or dated today, and I don't think it's going to feel that way anytime soon. Powering this phone is a 3400 milliamp battery, and I have to say that having experienced this phone for a significant amount of time now, battery life has just not been a concern. I can get more than 9 hours of screen on time in a single day if I need to, and paired with wireless charging or a fast charge plug, there's never really a worry whether I'll be left with a dead device. I think Samsung has done an especially good job optimizing their phone's power output in recent years, and even looking back over years' use, this phone at least hasn't seen any battery degradation so far or capacity issues either. It's about as good as the day it came out. So a couple other tidbits I want to mention before we get into the cameras. As far as little extra features and things, this phone isn't missing much. You've still got the headphone jack down below, which I know some people really value, so that's great to see. For an out loud listening experience, the dual stereo speakers are pretty solid too. Especially if you're coming from something like a budget or mid-range device without stereo speakers, I think you will really notice a difference. And the S10 is IP68 water and dust resistant as well, so showers, splashes from the sink, stuff getting spilled on it, there's nothing so far that's caused this phone any issues. And you're also all set with expandable storage as well, even though I think 128 gigs of built-in UFS 2.1 storage is good enough already. All in all, the thing that's great about the S10, I think, is just the fact that this is a phone that Samsung didn't compromise on. They didn't take anything away or miss anything that the competition has. So it's really a pretty complete package from top to bottom. So when considering the cameras, I think there are a few different ways to look at it. First off, what we do have here with the triple lenses just in general is a great setup. There's the 12 megapixel variable aperture main lens, a 12 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. This is, in my opinion, the trifecta. The only 3 lenses you really need to take any kinds of pictures or videos you could want. There's OIS, 2x optical zoom, super steady video, and all the kind of fun extras and features and shooting modes that you could ask for. Once again, in that $400 to $500 space, I don't think you're going to have a more capable setup paired with the necessary flagship internals to get the most out of everything. Pictures and videos look pretty great from this phone, and while they maybe weren't the absolute best from 2019, considering all the other smartphones out there, this was still a top 5 device. With all that being said though, camera tech is the thing that seems to be changing most year over year now, and the upgrades to the S20, and especially looking at the S20 Ultra, might entice some of you in that direction. Realistically though, for a vast majority of people, this phone will take the perfect pictures for your needs if you simply want to just capture those special moments with one tap of a button. And furthermore, even for people who are super into pictures and videos, I'm not confident that going with the S20 will yield significantly better results that absolutely justify the price anyway. It's just kind of a tough sell, and the S10 as it is just is a really good phone. Up front, I think you'll see the front-facing selfie camera once again is good enough for most occasions, but something Samsung could have done better. The 10 megapixel lens has all the capabilities, even 4K video recording, but other phones do selfies better. I can certainly live with it though, and everything else about this phone far exceeds my expectations at this price point anyway. So here are my final thoughts. Evaluating this phone at a, let's call it $450-ish price point, this is a device that well exceeds what you're paying for. From the design and build to the display, the internal specs and performance, this phone doesn't lack anything at all. It is absolutely a flagship phone in every sense of the word, and you can get something that looks as good and performs almost as well as the $1,000 devices of 2020 for less than half the price in this case. Evaluating this phone as a 2019 device in 2020, I also think it not only has held up really well, but it still has a lot of potential and life left in it. In one sense, yes, the S10 is already more than a year old, and we've seen a million other phones released since then that are a bit better. But looking at it from another perspective, this phone is only a year old. That's really nothing, especially nowadays. This phone will still be good 3 or 4 years from now. This is a device that's truly the epitome of value, and I'd argue it's likely the best overall deal on a phone that you can get right now in 2020. If you are thinking about a new phone, consider the S10 because I don't think you'll be disappointed. So there you go. That's everything you need to know about the S10 in 2020. Let me know what you guys think. Do you still have your S10? Are you interested in picking one up maybe? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, of course. Also, be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.